Namaste. I am Gloria Grace Rand, and as always, I like to say that I'm delighted to be with you because I am, and this is one of my favorite things to do in the whole world is to host this podcast, and I'm so delighted that you are here joining us, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast platform. And I've got a very multi-talented guest with us today. His name is Gramps Jeffrey, otherwise known as Mark Joseph, who is an author and has written a book, a children's book called I Don't Want to Turn 3, which explores what goes through a toddler's mind, parents so desperate to understand, and it's based on true experiences he's had with his grandchildren. And he's also written books for entrepreneurs as well. He's written his first book was called The Secrets of Retailing: How to Beat Walmart, and was picked up by Huffington Post. Ariana Huffington read it, so not every day that somebody can say that. So kudos to you for that. And he's also involved with baby boomers as well. So we're going to try to see how much of this we can cover in our talk today. So I want to welcome Gramps to Live, Love, Engage.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Well, I'm glad to have you. We've connected a little while ago, and there's I want to we're gonna I think we'll stick with our main topic for the bit, but I might want to branch into some of these other things. And I know that I believe that a lot of our audience are, if they're not grandparents yet, they may be. And I know I'm not yet. I'm not holding out hope, frankly, to be one, but you never know. Maybe my kids will surprise me. We'll see. But you have said that you feel it's real important that grandparents need to be more involved in raising their kids. So, um, why do you think that? And let's start from there, and then I want to get into maybe you can share a little bit also about why you wound up writing this book too.
No problem. The today's baby boomers, because I'm talking from a baby boomer standpoint, our site's babyboomer.org, but too many grandparents just don't care. 30% of grandparents are considered remote. Remote means they're just not involved in their kids' lives. I mean, think about that. That's one out of every three of us. That means if you look left and look right, one of you really don't care about your grandkids.
Mhm.
And that is caused by many different reasons. One of the reasons is caused by us as grandparents. I mean, first of all, we may not like the spouse our kid married. Okay, so all of a sudden there is a problem between you and the kids. We may be giving our kids too much unsolicited advice about telling them how to raise their kids. I mean, and they look at us and they say, "Hey, you raised us. You got to trust us. We're going to raise our kids. Trust us. We got to do this." So we may be giving them too much advice. We may be, exceeding our boundaries just by showing up at their house. Just showing up. So we cause a lot of this. We undermine our children's authority by challenging what they're teaching their kids. Grandparents question the parents' values and the family structure, how that's all put together. We as grandparents tend to play favorites. I've got 6 grandkids. I have a favorite, but I can't tell you. I can't tell them. We got to treat them all the same. We manipulate the siblings of a lot of the kids. Transactionally, we influence our grandkids. We give them money. We give them gifts. We take them on vacations. That causes strife. That really parents may not like a lot of that. We may not, our generation may not have the empathy it takes for these little kids, to have their feelings and so forth, and that causes problems. We may demand that the grandchild, comply and respect us. That causes issues. So, a third of us just aren't involved. We said we've got enough, so I'm not getting involved. And that's wrong. We have all got to get involved in raising these grandkids today, because as far as I'm concerned, this is the greatest generation this country has ever produced of kids from 1 to 10 years old. I mean, when you think about it, they come right out of the womb. They're on the internet. They've got their cell phones. They're learning electronically. I didn't get on the internet till I was 40 years old. So this is a whole different way of raising kids. And so we as grandparents have got to help step into this and offset this great information that they're learning. We've got to balance their lives with things that we grew up with. And so that's why we have got to be involved as we're raising this new generation of kids.
But it seems like you're also saying, though, is that we've got to be also mindful and respectful of our children, though, in this process, because if we're undermining how they raise their kids, or we're stepping on their boundaries by showing up unannounced, then they're not going to want us to be involved, even if we want to be involved. So I think we're going to have to kind of find a good balance there, it seems like, and being able to say, here, I'm available to offer you some advice, but try to be able to not get it ignored. So what would you so what do you recommend? I mean, how can someone who, let's say, they would like to be more involved in their grandchildren's life, but they don't want to piss off their kids, let's put it that way, in the process, how do they go about doing that?
Well, why don't we first look at what are parents' responsibility in today's
Mm,
world? Let's
okay.
take a look at what are they responsible? In today's world of instant information, uncertainty, cruelty, definitely cruelty in today's world. Differences in ideas. I mean, how many differences in ideas does this world have today versus forever? What really is the true role of parents? Children, they're supposed to provide their children with food and clothing and a place to live, obviously. They're supposed to provide financial support, making medical care, all the opportunities that they can to receive an education. That's really the role of parents. And they're there to protect their children. They're from harm and provide them with a safe environment. In today's world and schools, that's a scary thing. They give them supervision, give them control, and they're supposed to be in control. But they're also there to teach them all kinds of traits. They're there to teach them honesty. They're there to teach them responsibility and kindness, independence, respect. That's the parents' job, is to teach their kids respect their grandparents. Positive thinking. We've got to make sure that what these kids are doing is looking for the glass that is half full rather than half empty. Creativity, that's so important in today's world. There's so many different kids with so many different talents. We've got to encourage all that. We've got to encourage healthy eating. You got to teach them how to eat right, how to
Mm,
exercise. They got to get off the cell phones and out into the sports fields. Get them to exercise. We also have to teach them that you can learn and be successful from failure. You
mm,
can fail, and
it's
that's
true.
something that we can teach them what to do. But one of the most important things, and one of the most important things grandparents need to do with these kids, is teach them how to have fun. In today's world, there's so many times that they're not having fun. We've got to bring that fun back in. So
Yeah.
I guess a long way to answer your question is, how do you get and relate to your kids? Is you got to talk about this stuff. You've got to let them tell you that, hey, you got to give me some space here. I mean, how many times do they want their space?
Right.
We're in fact, I was at my granddaughter Grace's third birthday party last month, and she and her brother, she had gotten a bunch of trucks, and so the two of them were playing with these trucks on the floor, and they started to fight a little bit. And Grace looks at her brother and she says, "I need my space." And she gets up and she walks to one side of the sofa, and then he looks at her and she says, "I need my space too." And he walks to the other side. Now, they didn't learn that on the internet. I
Yeah.
am sure that their mother one day got so frustrated with them and said, "I need my space,"
Yes,
actually
of
walked
course.
away from him. So
Hmm.
she taught her, she taught those kids how to use that.
Yeah.
So we've got to be able to communicate that with our children and get beyond, the overbearing grandparents and get involved with raising these kids. Because, in today's world, you know, especially with COVID, I mean, think about how this has really reduced the ability for us to live long. You know, we've got all of a sudden, we need to live each day to its fullest. COVID and everything, the life expectancy for seniors now has dropped 2 years since
Yeah,
2019. When you think
I've
about
heard
it,
that.
2 whole years, it's never dropped like that. You know, in 2019, we were supposed to live to 78 years old in 10 months. In 2020, it was 77 years old. In 2021, now it's 76. It's a combination of everything we normally die of plus of COVID. So
Mhm.
we have got to, make amends and get involved because, we may not be here tomorrow.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting. I was reading, I think it was a Conversations with God book recently, and it raised an interesting point in that, okay, so just bear with me. God was talking about other civilizations, where the grandparents, in a sense, had that was their responsibility, was to raise the kids because the parents are still young and are still trying to find themselves and raise themselves in a way. And if you think about it, I mean, I had my daughter at 30. I was still, in a sense, finding my way. It's like if I was able to raise her now at the age I'm now at, which is now 60, I know so much more and I could do a so much better job than I did back then. So I think ultimately, if the grandparents can let, the parents know that, hey, there is such a thing of with age comes wisdom, and that I have learned and I have made mistakes and I now know how to be able to save you some of this grief and let me help you with the kids so that you can still be doing, following some of your dreams and finding yourself. What do you think about that?
Well, you bring out a great point. And the point is, it takes a village to raise a
Mm,
kid.
yeah.
Right? When you think about it, especially in our today's world, where you've got
Mhm.
single parents, you got in fact, I think it's over 2 million kids now are being raised directly by their grandparents because the kid,
Mm.
the
Okay.
something happened to the parents, they're in
Yeah.
jail or they have overdoses. So we've already got we're raising 2 million parents, kids as we are as grandparents, but it
Mm.
takes a village. It takes the grandparents, but not only the grandparents. It takes the aunts and the
Mm.
uncles and the
Yeah.
cousins.
Mhm.
My book's a lot about how the cousins interact. The cousins help mold what a child is. It takes friends to do all that, because you're absolutely right. What happens is we do get wiser as we get older, and the
Mhm.
reason we get wiser because every decade we make a lot more mistakes,
Right.
and because we make these mistakes, we learn from them. And
Yes.
so, once you're getting into your 50s and your 60s, because, the average age of a grandparent today, the grandmother is 50 years old, and the average for the
Mm.
grandfather is 52 years old. So
Wow.
as you get older, you're becoming wiser, whether you know it or not, because you're
Yeah.
making a lot more mistakes and learning from them.
Yeah.
And those are the things that we can share with this youngest generation to
Mhm.
help offset all this great stuff they're learning off the internet.
Cool. Well, let's talk a little bit about the book then that you wrote. So you said it was inspired by the experiences you had with your grandchildren. So what really did what actually, it's one thing to, have fun or be able to help your grandkids. It's another to turn that into a book. So what was that process like for you?
Well, living this past year because of the pandemic caused by COVID-19, except for an isolation, except for being able to be with my family, kind of
Mm.
gave me a special chance to kind of watch and interact with these grandkids.
Mm.
And I got to tell you what a trip that was because
Mhm.
during COVID, we had all six of them at our house for about 6 weeks all by together. So that gave
Wow.
me a chance to really, really understand how they interact. All six of these kids have completely different personalities. But the
Mhm.
one thing they do have in common is their sense of curiosity. How excited they get when they do accomplish something. Watching them grow year to year and how they interact with each other really is the basis for this book because it is a true story.
Mm.
What does go through a toddler's mind? The parents are so hard to find, trying to find out. When does a toddler really understand the difference between me and us? That's part of this story and how this whole family finds out all this together. As a baby boomer myself, trying to understand how the world has evolved since I was 3 years old is also part of the story. My parents, they didn't have cell phones, they
Yeah.
didn't have the internet. They didn't have cable TV. They didn't have
Mhm.
remotes. I was my dad's remote. He said, "Son, go change the channel." You know,
Yes.
I was the remote. My
Mhm.
parents' definition of discipline is completely different,
Yeah.
than parents of today. Has today's world made for a better place for children to grow up in? I'll kind of let your listeners answer that question. As they compare to how they were growing up to how kids are growing up today.
Mm. Yeah, there's certainly uh, different challenges, and I think that's it. Ultimately, is that every generation has their own advantages and disadvantages. I think happening to them. I mean, because again, my parents grew up during the Depression, and so they raised me a certain way. And yes, I was basically the TV guide. They would ask me, Gloria, what's on television at 8 o'clock, and I could tell you, since especially there were only like three main channels back then, not like we have
Yeah.
today. Can't do that now. Uh, so it is good that you're able to have this resource, and I'm presuming this is a resource not only probably for grandparents but also for parents as well, I would think. So what's can you share maybe like what was one of the most telling maybe lessons in the book, or something, or maybe even just a fun story from it? I'm
Oh yeah.
curious.
The book really explores at what age do we begin to take responsibility for our actions. Is it
Mm.
3 years old? Is it 13 years old? Is it 23 years old? Again, as a baby boomer, I know plenty of 63 years old that don't take responsibility for their actions yet.
Yeah.
But it's a true story, and it's like a children's book's 32 pages long, so it's a 20-minute adventure. So I can tell you the story. It was basically Jordan was turning 3 the next day, and he was playing with all his different cousins, each one, and he was to steal all their toys. And then when everybody came over his birthday party, his oldest cousin Olivia, who was 8, walked into his room and saw all this pile of toys he'd stolen. And she was a dancer, and she saw her dancing shoes on top of these toys. And so she went and got everybody together. And the hero of the story is the dad, because the father got all these kids together into a circle to talk about what are they going to do with what Jordan had done. And again, this is a true story because Olivia actually came up with the answer of what to do. She told the other cousins that we need to give all of these toys to the homeless kids downtown. And so that, after much angst, that's what they all agreed to do. So that's basically the story is how do these kids interact? How do the parents influence how they interact?
Mm.
And then how do they end up finally doing something good?
Hmm. Wow, that's amazing. Well, uh, where can people get the book? If they is that available on like Amazon or something? Or
Yeah, you can buy it on Amazon or Barnes and Noble, about 100 other sites, or come to my site. It's grampsjeffrey.com or I don't want to turn 3.com.
okay,
Uh, and if any of your listeners want to continue the conversation about any of this, just email me at grampsjeffrey@gmail.com.
perfect. Now, the other thing that we had connected on, and you mentioned it briefly at the beginning, was that you've got a website for baby boomers. So tell us a little bit about that. Why did you start that, and what is the purpose of the website?
Well, the baby boomer generation, every is a very diverse generation, as you well know. And
Mhm.
politically, it's so diverse. Religiously, it's very diverse. Ideas, everything but it's really not that much diverse than the generation before and the generation after. It's just a diverse generation. But the
Mhm.
one thing that baby boomers have in common is a shared experience. And
Mhm.
that shared experience happened for things that you talked about earlier. There were only 3 TV stations. So we were all kind of geared into that. Everybody had a landline. So we were all
Mhm.
kind of geared into that. So we had all this information that we were all circled to us.
Mhm.
The things that we have in common in our shared experience, if you think about it, were the Kennedy assassinations, both of the
Mhm.
Kennedys, Martin Luther King's assassination, the landing on the moon. We were all
Yeah.
there for the landing on the moon. Birth control during our generation became very widespread. That
Mhm.
was really the rollout of birth control. Vietnam, both the good and bad. it was there. We lost
Mhm.
4 of our people at Kent State.
Right.
That's a shared experience we have. Riots in the streets in the late 60s. But the music brings us all together. It still brings us all together today. I mean,
Sure.
every major market has an oldies station. We
Mhm.
listen to Elvis and the Beach Boys and the Beatles, the Three Dog Night, Supreme,
Yeah.
the association. Those are all things that we all had in common. The movies, we were all very much involved with the movies, whether it was Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid or Jaws or any of the
Mhm.
Spielberg movies, the Animal House or Star Wars or The
Mhm.
Godfather. These are all experiences that bring us together. And so we've created the site of babyboomer.org to bring all those together so that we
Mhm.
can have those experiences plus all the latest information. On things like, health and Alzheimer and dementia and, on pickleball, how to sports and all those things that we're involved in. And we've got experts in all different kinds of categories on the site talking to us so that we've got the latest information so that we can not only live in the past, but live in the future.
I love that. And you've got yeah, a ton of resources on there because I have seen that, including podcasts. So, in fact, if you happen to miss an episode of my show, you'll be able to find it on babyboomer.org. So, check it out. I highly recommend it. And we still have a few more minutes. I'd love to talk about let's put your other hat on, I guess, as it were, and especially because my audience, I know, are entrepreneurs. So you've also uh, have experience in that, and you wrote the book, The Secrets of Retailing. So, what was your background in that, and that you decided to share some secrets that you knew?
Well, interestingly enough, there are still 12 million baby boomers who own businesses.
Mm.
The book I wrote is The Secrets of Retailing: How to Beat Walmart. And the reason I wrote this book is I've started a couple businesses in my career. One of them I took public. The one I took public became the premier business to business site on the internet where we sold in case quantity to small businesses all around the world, shipped in all 50 states, around 40 foreign countries. Our customer base were the moms and the pops who were surviving and thriving as the chains. So, we were selling into to the Main Street America so they can compete against the big guys. And so as I was, building this company, I was getting all these calls from customers. What do I do? How do I build a business? So what I wrote the book on, which is 15 chapters, is a step-by-step. Each chapter is about something different. One chapter is about how to hire people. Another chapter is finding locations. Another chapter is how do you deal with your resources and finding products. Another chapter is on internet marketing. Another chapter is on traditional marketing. And the last chapter is how do you exit? How do you get out of your business? How do you get rid of it? How do you sell it? Because again, there's 12 million baby boomers still having their own businesses, and so that was why I wrote my first book.
Mm. Well, it sounds quite comprehensive and very needed because it is something that I know when I even just started my business, even though it's not a retailing type of business per se, there was still a lot of learning curve, shall we say, that I had to know. And so this sounds like it's a really good resource for someone who is trying to be able to be successful, and especially because nowadays it seems to be even harder for like retailers to be able to survive because not only Walmart but with competition from Amazon.
Well, as you well know, it takes a lot of guts to become an entrepreneur and open up your own business
Mm.
because 50% of small businesses fail in the first
Right.
5 years. Think about that.
Right.
That's one out of every two. They
Mhm.
and why does it fail? What are the reasons why businesses fail? Well, 42% of these that fail, they fail because they don't have a market for their products.
Mm.
They've got the wrong service. As a buyer, in my early on in my career, I was in the department store business and also in the off-price business as a buyer. And I learned very early on that you don't buy for yourself, you buy for
Mhm.
your customers.
Right.
So
Mhm.
many of the mistakes that entrepreneurs make is, they think they got the greatest items in sliced bread, but nobody else wants it. So that's why 42% of these businesses fail is you got the
Mm.
wrong product, you got the wrong service. 30% fail because you run out of cash. You don't have enough capital. If you're an entrepreneur, a small business, and you want to open up a business today, you have got to make sure you have enough cash to last you for 6 months as if you had no sales. You can't go into this without enough cash because it's going to strangle you, because that's why 30% of these businesses fail. They run out of money. So make sure that you've lined up the capital to open up your business for life that's going to last you for 6 months. And then 20% fail because the entrepreneurs, they're very selfish people sometimes. They think they're the smartest guy in the room. But you've got to realize that you've got to be able to put together a team, and you got to be able to communicate. So you have to be able to hire people that are smarter than you. And may like things that you don't. Like in my case, I love marketing and merchandising, but I can't stand accounting. You stick me in a room with a spreadsheet for 8 hours, I will go absolutely nuts. So I've got to hire somebody who loves that.
Yeah.
So you've got to take that attitude. So keep those things in mind. If anyone in your audience is thinking about opening a business, make sure you've got all of those bases covered, because we don't want to see half of the people go out of business.
Yeah, definitely. And that last point is so important, because you absolutely need to have other people to be able to help you to grow. You can't do it all yourself. I've learned that lesson the hard way, and it's a recipe for not only failure but also for stress. And when you're trying to do things that you're not either aren't good at, and you think that you're going to save money by doing it all yourself, but then it winds up costing you money because you could be hiring someone for a fraction possibly of the amount of money that you could be bringing in while someone else is handling those chores. So I like that you mentioned that. That's really good. You are involved in a lot of different things. You've had a wealth of experience. So I wanted to maybe end our discussion today by asking, what are you curious about right now?
I'm curious as to why we are not more involved in our grandkids' lives. When you think about it, we as grandparents have to add things to them that they're not getting on the internet. And one of the best things that we can do is to teach them and get them involved in reading books. I mean, whether it's your book and my book may be too advanced for them, but my children's book is right up their alley.
Yeah.
And there's 100 other great children's books out there that we should
Yeah.
be reading. We need to make sure that they are reading books every night. Now, why is that? Why do we need to make sure that we get these kids into reading habits? There's all kinds of benefits. One of the first benefits is bonding. Okay, again, knowing it takes 20 minutes to read a little kid's book. So you got the kid on your knee, and you're reading the book together. That really gives you a chance to spend nice time together, just you and them. All these other things, just you and them talking about a book. And then when you're talking about the book and reading the book, the one thing that it supports is listening skills. Now, you and I both know, as we grew older, the listening skills are the best skill we can have. You as a podcaster, you got to listen. Otherwise, nobody's going to listen to your podcast. So I got to listen. As I'm growing the business that I've got, I'm going to listen to what customers want. So listening skills are the best skills we can instill in these little kids. And if we have them on our laps for 20 minutes, it requires them to listen, it requires them to focus. This is something that we can pass on. The reading a book to them creates cognitive and language development. There's plenty of these words in these books that these kids don't understand. Gives you a chance to explain that to them. Gives you a chance to really share and help with their knowledge. There's plenty of words in these books I don't understand. I got to go look up. So, it's good for everybody that these books have these cognitive and then, and one other thing is the attention span. These 2, 3, 4-year-olds, they bounce off the wall all day long. You got them in your lap. You got them there for 20 minutes. It helps with concentration and self-discipline. So if there's anything that their listeners get out of our conversation today is, please make an effort. Pick up a book. Get your kids reading and interested in books, because if we teach them and get their interest in reading today, as they grow older, they're going to have interest in making sure they read for themselves.
Oh, for sure. And I'll pass along the advice that I gained from in reading to my own kids, is that make it fun. So if you can try to maybe come up with different voices for some of the characters, because that gets the kids so engaged, and then it makes it fun for you, because if you're just reading a boring book, and it's not a boring book, but if you're reading it with with the with the idea of this is just a chore, then neither one of you is going to benefit. But if you do it from a chance of, as you say, this is a chance for you to bond, this is a chance for you to be able to really have some fun, because you mentioned that at the beginning too. This is a good way to be able to have some fun with your grandchild. They're going to benefit, number one, from the time with you. They're going to benefit just, as you say, cognitively and everything. And it's just a really great thing to do. I mean, my mom read to me. She taught me how to read when I was 3. She instilled a love of learning. We went to the library and got books. There are still libraries out there. You can check out books together. In fact, I would recommend that. Go check out books together, because it's just going to benefit the kids. I'm so grateful, because even though my son for a while stopped reading, but now that he's all grown, but he's gotten back to reading again now. And I'm so grateful for that. And I think it's because I did read to him, and I know my mother, I think, read to him as well. So it's so important. So I appreciate you sharing that with our audience today.
Yeah, when you think about it, and reading is part of it, but as adults, it is necessary for us to teach children how to think, not what to think. They're going to learn
Yes,
what to think as they grow older, but
right.
we need to teach them how to think. And
Mm,
reading books is like the best way to teach them how to start thinking.
yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us today, and share again one more time where people can reach out to you, how they can get involved. I know I'll have it in the show notes, but if you want to mention it one more time.
Sure. My book is I Don't Want to Turn Three. You can buy it on Amazon or Barnes and Noble or my site at grampsjeffrey.com, or email me at grampsjeffrey@gmail.com. Our new site, thebabyboomer.org, is up and alive. So just click on and join.
Very good.
So we can all have that shared experience together.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you again for being with us today. I really appreciate it. And I also appreciate all of you out there, and for watching and for listening. And if you're not subscribed yet on maybe your podcast platform, your favorite one, I encourage you to do that. Also, subscribe to us on YouTube as well, would be wonderful. And if you have any comments, you can reach out to me through my website. If you go to gloriarand.com, and I would love to hear if you got any suggestions for the show, any topics you'd like to hear about. I'm open to ideas and suggestions. It's awesome. So until next time, as always, I encourage you to go out and live fully, love deeply, and engage authentically.